Raider Nation, we got a special live show today, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. We always go live every single Tuesday. Today, though, we're going to be interviewing a Raiders draft player. Not going to tell you who it is. We are going to be giving away, though, a signed jersey. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure your notifications are turned on because it's going to be a hell of a show. Major changes will be happening to the Las Vegas Raiders roster under Pete Carroll and John Spytek. I'm Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report, and today's show is presented by Panda Sups. Use code Jeanty for 25% off all Panda Sup supplements at pandasups.com. That link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. So every single year, I like to do this video, and it is a video that I always switch up every single year. Essentially, what we are going to be looking at is this. We're going to be looking at players that made the 53-man roster on the Raiders last season. And out of those players that made the 53, I'm going to give you some names that aren't going to be making the roster this season. On top of that, we're also going to be looking at some players that made some major contributions, whether it was starts or, big-time plays at the end of last season that I don't think are going to end up making the roster this year, which, in all honesty, is a good thing because I've been doing this show for a long, long time, and I will continuously say 53-man roster projections, this style of video, it's becoming more and more difficult because for the first time in a long time, this is one of the most deepest Raiders rosters that I have seen, and that's all credit to Pete Carroll and to John Spytek. So I first want to start off with some players that made the 53-man roster last season that I do not know if we're going to make it this year. I'm also going to project what the likelihood is that they could end up making the team. Let's first talk about running back Zamir White. And, Zeus was a back that we were hoping was going to have a big year last season, put on some muscle, a lot of cool videos of him, riding some horses, doing some crazy curls. But let's face the facts. It was a failure in multitude of different ways. 65 carries, 183 yards. He was benched very early on and, just was not a good running back. So what do the Raiders do? They go out and they get Ashton, Jeanty. They go out and they get Raheem Mostert. And quite frankly, I think if this regime had to pick between Sincere McCormick and Zamir White, if McCormick is healthy, even if he's not 100% healthy, I'm going to be real with you, I would end up rolling with McCormick. So if it was up to me, I would say that Zamir White has a 25% chance to make the roster this year. Maybe he comes in more motivated. Maybe he comes in, a little bit more ball security. Maybe he shows that he can also give a little bit of special teams value. I don't know what it is. But to me, I would say Zamir White, 25% chance to make the roster. Let's go to another guy here. It's Dylan Laube at the running back position. And these are the two running backs that made the team. Quite frankly, the four running backs that made the team last season for the Silver and Black. Alexander Madison, Amir Abdullah, Zamir White, Dylan Laube. I don't know if any four of them are going to make. I will say this. Out of all of them, I do think Laube has the best shot out of the names that I just mentioned. Madison's obviously not on the team. Amir Abdullah still a free agent. But Laube right now, I would say, has a 55% chance to make the team. And, he didn't get many opportunities last season because he put the ball on the ground. And when you're a rookie and you turn the ball over, that does not lead to good opportunities. He does give you some special teams value. The Raiders did add Tommy Mellott, but I would say right now, for a 6th-round pick last season, there's nothing guaranteed this season. Let's go to Tyreek McAllister, wide receiver. We know the Raiders added a lot of wide receiver depth this offseason, whether it was in the draft with 3 different players, but McAllister does give you some of those athletic traits that this organization has been looking for. Do I think McAllister is going to be used as a receiver this season? No, I do not. Jack Bech, Thornton Jr., you look at even Tommy Mellott, those are going to be the receivers that this team's going to move forward with. But is there at least some special teams value? Sure. You can't teach 4.3 speed, and that's what McAllister has, legit 4.3 speed. With that being said, though, I see him having a 10% chance to end up making this roster. It was a really fun story last season. He had a great preseason. I still remember that final preseason game where he was absolutely electric, earning that spot. Unfortunately, this is a more talented roster. At least we all hope it's a more talented roster. Let's go to another one here. It's going to be Thayer Munford on the offensive line. He's in the final year of his contract, 7th-round pick back in 2022 with Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels. And for the Raiders, you have 8 offensive linemen, I can confidently say right now, ahead of Thayer Munford. From, your starters to Jordan Meredith to an Alex Kappa, Caleb Rogers, also Charles Grant, who you went out and drafted. But if this team decides to keep 9, I think that's where Munford's going to end up making this squad. 11 games played last season, 5 sacks allowed. Did really struggle when asked to play at the tackle positions, which makes me wonder, is that why they went out and drafted a Caleb Rogers? Is that why they went out and drafted a Charles Grant? I would say it's a coin flip right now on whether or not Munford ends up making this squad. If this team wants to keep 9 offensive linemen, Munford's going to have a shot. If the Raiders go, you know what, we're going to rock with 8, I'm going to be real with you. I don't think he's got a shot in hell. So let me know down below. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. Will Thayer Munford make the Raiders 53-man roster? Give me a yes. Give me a no. My answer is going to be coming up right here after this YouTube ad break. Yes, if they keep 9. No, if they keep 8. It's as simple as that. But the reason why I like to ask this question is because if you're watching the Raiders report in May, you're what I like to call a real one. And the fact that we can talk about the 9th person on the offensive line, only a real one would do that. Let's go to some more players here that made the roster last season that might not make it this season. Let's talk about Amari Bernie at linebacker. 17 tackles, a sack, 3 tackles for a loss. This is also somebody that was drafted by that McDaniels and Ziegler regime, but in terms of what's going to help Bernie out, he offers you special teams ability, and he does fit that Carroll John Spytek mold of what they are looking for this offseason, which is just, I'm going to look for guys that are athletically extremely gifted, and Bernie is a extremely gifted player who did get some more opportunities last season. With that being said, I'm going to say that he's got a 75% chance to make the roster because he could start over Devin White, right? Like, I could do an entire show of why Amari Bernie deserves to start over Devin White. The only problem with the Bernie conversation is I could also make the same argument with Tommy Eichenberg, and I could also make the same argument with Amari Gaynor, who we'll talk about here in a moment. But next up here is Tommy Eichenberg, who was drafted in the 5th round out of Ohio State last season. Didn't really get too many opportunities. That's because we had Robert Spillane, we had Divine Diablo, had Luke Masterson from time to time. But now, no more Spillane. And I think a lot of Raiders fans, myself included last season, were sitting here going, Eichenberg's going to take over for Spillane if Spillane doesn't come back. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. I still see him making this roster, and I'll give it a 70% chance to happen, just simply because there are so many unknowns at that linebacker position. But if there's one thing that I do know, Eichenberg is a football player. And he breathes it, he loves it, and I know this organization knows that Tommy Eichenberg loves football, and that is a huge, huge factor for this new regime. Let's go to another linebacker here, and it's Amari Gaynor at linebacker. One of the things that when I did this show, I tried to look at which players I thought were the most likely to not make the roster that made it last season. So the fact that we're only really breaking down 8 players that made it last year that aren't going to have it, I don't think that that's a good or a bad thing necessarily. But Amari Gaynor is my sleeper this season at linebacker to be the other starter next to a Landon Roberts. And it's only because of what he's doing this offseason, the effort that he's putting in, what I've been hearing from other people that wear that C on their chest from the Raiders. Amari Gaynor is doing a lot of the right things, and I really think that he's got a 75% chance to make this roster, which, if you've noticed, was just as high as Amari Bernie, a little bit higher than Tommy Eichenberg. And I say that because Gaynor gives you some of that coverage ability that not a lot of those other dudes do. And the fact that the Raiders also went out and drafted Cody Lindenberg, I think that actually hurts Eichenberg a little bit more than for a guy like Bernie or for a dude like Amari Gaynor. Let's go to another player here, Chris Smith. Safety, Georgia. He was drafted back in 2022 with Dave Ziegler, Josh McDaniels. And, Smith has always been a player that we've been kind of waiting on and waiting. And I don't know if you're ever going to see Chris Smith, because Chris Smith's a hell of a football player in college, leader of that Georgia defense. And he is a very well-respected player in the locker room. But if we're just talking about talent and talent alone, I don't know what Smith necessarily brings to be able to get him on the field. The way that he ends up making this team is because our safety depth is a little bit thin right now. But then on top of that, I don't know the special teams value because they went out and they got Lonnie Johnson Jr. He's a better special teams player. I almost think Trey Taylor might be a special teams player that's a little bit better than him. And Smith, not the best athlete, and because he's not long and lanky like a lot of these other players in this secondary that are bringing in, I don't know if he's going to fit the mold. So for that, I'm going to give him a 20% chance to make this Raiders roster. We got some more names coming up here in just a moment. The names that I'm about to get into, they didn't make the Raiders' initial 53-man roster, but they played in several games last season, which is why I wanted to do the show the way that I'm doing it today. But before I get into those names, seriously, huge shout out to Panda Sups. I'm being real. These guys saved my ass this weekend. Alex and I on Sunday, we went out and, we went out just to have a little brunch. We're getting down there to the days. We're about a month away from getting married, so we wanted to go out, have a few drinks. I'm not going to lie, I haven't really had an old-fashioned in a long time. I had some mezcal over the weekend, and I was banged up a little bit Monday morning. Luckily, though, I got a scoop of the BCAAs. I was able to bounce back really quickly, and it's just the ability to stay hydrated, whether you're trying to get the most out of your workout, whether you're trying to wake up not being super hungover the next morning. I use BCAAs way more often than I think people actually realize, and, often Chugs and I, we do our crazy Friday happy hour shows, Thursday happy hour shows. How do you bounce back after doing draft day over and over and over? You bounce back by taking care of your body. So whether you need some protein, you need some pre-workout, you need some greens, I'm telling you right now, Panda Sups is the reason why I have lost 20 pounds in the last 2 months. Panda Sups is the reason why I feel like I'm in halfway decent shape a month away from my wedding. And if you're trying to get into halfway decent shape as well, use code Jeanty for 25% off at pandasups.com. I will say this might be your last opportunity to get 25% off at Panda Sups. Let's go to some other players here that were on the Raiders roster last season, at least got some opportunities to get in some games. But again, I don't think that they're going to end up making the roster. First guy is going to be running back Chris Collier. If we're talking about athletes, Collier is actually one of the better athletes from Lock Haven, which is literally right down the road from me. Shout out to the 570. I actually almost went to Lock Haven to play baseball. I'm going to give this guy only a 5% chance, though, to make the roster, because if you're the Raiders and you go out and you have Jeanty, you have Mostert, I could really see them keeping potentially only 4 running backs on the roster. Now, maybe Collier goes out there and does some really special stuff this offseason to prove that he can be an impact player on special teams. But if he doesn't prove that he can be an impact player on special teams, I don't see how he ends up making the squad. Let's go to my next man, Alex Bachmann. Shout out to my guys, Jay Raider and Raider Rundown. I was on the show with them on Sunday or Saturday. Honestly, I was talking to those guys for like 2.5 hours. Had a great time. But Rundown made a funny joke. Like, Alex Bachmann sounds like somebody that, if you ever get into legal advice, you go call Alex Bachmann and Bachmann and Bachmann. And I think that that's what he's going to be doing this offseason. 3 catches, 31 yards. Did end up being a, tough player. It was a player that when the Raiders signed him last May, I was like, no way this guy's going to end up making the squad. Ended up proving me wrong, but let's be real here. There's just no way that I can sit up here and say that Alex Bachmann's going to make this team. 1% chance, but I'll tell you this. I think I gave him a 1% chance last year, and if Bachmann can prove me wrong again, the best of luck to him. Let's go to Christian Wilkerson at wide receiver. The last 2 years I've done this show, I've said I don't think Christian Wilkerson's going to make it. Brand new regime. 2023, I don't know if Christian Wilkerson's going to make it, though he's got some connections to New England. Wilkerson is a good football player, but he's a practice squad player, and he's probably going to end up making a practice squad roster. He's long, he's lanky, 6'1", 214 pounds. I'm only going to give him a 2% chance to make it, because if you told me, Mitch, which wide receiver that's kind of built like Wilkerson that gives you the skill set that he has that's actually going to make this team, I'm going to go with Kyle Phillips, who was the first recruit ever that Chip Kelly had back at UCLA, and it was literally one of the very first moves that the Raiders made once they hired Chip Kelly to be their offensive coordinator. I mean, this move happened, I want to say, in February in terms of bringing in Kyle Phillips. So for Wilkerson, 2% chance. Let's go to a very sneaky name, and this is going to be somebody that I do a show on probably a little bit later on this week or next week. I had a source tell me over the weekend, Thomas Harper, Mitch, is somebody that this organization does like a lot more than what they're leading on. Notre Dame guy, so that's kind of where he got to start with Telesco last year. but he did show a lot of promise last year. He had a 77 overall PFF coverage grade, and because free safety is a little bit of a concern right now, and because Harper does at least give you some versatility, I'm still going to say there is a less than 50% chance that he makes it. I'm going to go 40% chance to make this roster, but if he can get into camp in May, June, and July, and he can prove that he is a coverage safety, because Jeremy Chin, not a coverage safety. Lonnie Johnson Jr., not a coverage safety. Chris Smith Jr., not a coverage safety. Like, we legitimately do not have a proven free safety on this roster. That's just a cold, hard fact. I hope that Isaiah Paul-Mao can play well, and I hope that he can prove me wrong. But do I think Isaiah Paul-Mao is a good enough free safety? I am a little bit unsure about that. I'm not going to lie to you. So because of that, there is a chance for Thomas Harper. It's going to be a 40%. Let's go to the defensive end now. I'm going to look at Charles Snowden. And Snowden was a really fun player to follow last season. Somebody who went in and continuously worked his tail off, ended up making this squad. Again, like, not the initial 53, but did end up proving that he got a lot of work. And there was a lot of injuries that went down on that defensive line. I mean, we're talking about a player that had 39 tackles. 3 tackles for loss, started multiple games for the Silver and Black last season, especially near the end of the season. But the Raiders go out. They bring back Malcolm Kuntz. You still have Tyree Wilson. Watch out for Andre Carter. He's sitting there. Ja Joyner is a very well-respected UDFA. But then also at defensive tackle, you got Tonka Hemingway that some people are wondering if he's going to be listed as a defensive end. You got some versatility and a J.J. Pegues as well to play a little defensive end. I'm going to give Snowden a 45% chance to make the roster, and I think it's really going to come down to him, Andre Carter. It could also really come down to what the Raiders think of their defensive tackles, because I was told by a source over the weekend that the Raiders love Max Crosby, obviously. They love Malcolm Kuntz. They do really like Tyree Wilson, but they love their defensive tackle rotations. And, I originally thought that this could be a team that keeps 4 defensive ends, which really isn't that many defensive ends, 10 defensive linemen in total. I wonder if the Raiders keep 3 defensive ends and 7 defensive tackles because of the versatility that some of those defensive tackles give. Snowden has a 45% chance. The biggest day that's going to prove whether or not Snowden makes his team, though, I think it's going to be July 22nd for his court case. I got some more names coming up here in just a moment, but if you haven't already, I want you to get in for a chance to win an Ashton Jeanty jersey. I told people $5 super thanks if you can't join the show live. $5 super chat when we are live to get and for a chance to be entered in. These are the people that I've seen so far send in a super thanks, and Chugs was like, do people know how to do it? So if you're on mobile and you look at the video, you're going to see a heart with a dollar symbol on it. You can click on that if you're on your phone, and you'll be able to donate $5 to be able to get in right away. It literally looks just like this. That's the super thanks button. If you're on your desktop, though, and because the other day my dad's like, Mitch, I don't know how to find this thing. Well, Richie, you click these 3 buttons right there, those 3 little dots. It's going to scroll down right here, and then you're going to click on this button right here for super thanks. I know that people are busy, but I know people always want to be participating in this show. So if you want to be entered in for a chance to win an Ashton Jeanty jersey, $5 super chat or a $5 super thanks to be entered. Winner is going to be announced Friday, May 30th. Right now we have 9 super thanks in and a lot more super chats in as well. It's going to be a fun one. I'm hoping we can do more stuff like this, though, going forward. Let's keep it moving here on the show. Andre Carter at defensive end. This is going to be another really good athlete. Like, there were some people that thought that Carter could have been a first-round pick a few years ago. Long, lanky, and he is athletic. I would say that him and Charles Snowden is going to be one of probably the best, and I mean really, truly one of the best competitions that you're going to see in camp, which really could determine who's going to end up making the roster. I'm going to give advantage to Carter, and I'm going to say there's a 50% chance that he ends up making this roster, and I only say that because Andre Carter doesn't have the drama in the background like Charles Snowden has. Though, Andre Carter is going to, I really, truly think, surprise some people this offseason. Let's go to Matthew Butler next up here at defensive tackle. Butler was drafted in the 5th round out of Tennessee a few seasons ago. And, yeah, he's had to deal with a lot of different regimes. And, we did a show 2 years ago right when the Raiders drafted Butler. Like, one of the biggest concerns that the coaching staff has that Butler didn't love football. If Butler's still showing that he doesn't love football, he's got a 0% chance to make this squad. And there's a lot of other players that the Raiders have added to this defensive tackle room, which I think illustrates how unconfident they were and some of these other players. I'm not going to say there's a low chance, but there's only a 10% chance that Butler makes this squad. Butler does have the support of some other Raiders players like Max Crosby. Crosby has told me that he's really seen a lot of growth from Butler, and it was something that you heard a little bit last season as well, which is why he got cut and then ended up coming back to the squad. Sometimes you need a little bit of a wake-up call. Let's be real. And I think Butler got a wake-up call. He probably also got a lot of wake-up calls when they went out and drafted Pegues, Tonka, signed, what's his name, Fotu, Matthew Butler. Tall task ahead. I think he's going to be a practice squad guy, though. Another dude here is Zach Carter, defensive tackles with the Cincinnati Bengals, came over to our squad, 22 tackles, 1.5 sacks, but I think that this new regime goes, we want to have some younger players overall. If Carter, though, goes out there and shows growth and maybe he can add a little bit of weight, I'll give him a 20% chance to make the squad. Cornerback, next guy coming up here, it's going to be Sam Webb. Sam Webb has been a practice squad player, and Sam Webb has been probably one of my favorite players that I have covered that's, not a true starter, somebody that really hasn't made the 53, but Webb has been able to stick on several different practice squads because he is a really, really hard worker. And that's just a cold, hard fact. But if there's one thing that Webb doesn't have, it's, I would say, some of the athletic traits that you see from a lot of these other players. Now, he's 6'2", he's 195. I think people just assume that he's a lot smaller. He's got some physicality to him. But Pete Carroll loves athletic, long, lanky corners. And Webb has got some length to him, but he doesn't have all those athletic traits. So because of that, I'm going to give him a 20% chance to make the Raiders' final roster. And then I do have one more name here that I'll break down for you guys. It's Kai Blue Kelly, another corner. It's going to give you some inside slot ability. And nickel is a major question mark right now for this team. But if there's one thing that Kai doesn't bring you, it's doesn't really have athletic traits, not long and lanky. And maybe the Raiders are going to try to convert one of their other outside corners into an inside guy, kind of like what you saw the reverse of Nate Hobbs a few years ago. But for Kai Blue, I'm going to give him a 20% chance to make the roster. Again, there's a lot of guys that'll have a chance, but unless they do something or they show up more than what they showed up last season, I think that you're going to see a lot of players that helped us last year that probably aren't going to make it this year. But overall today, we talked about, 9 + 8, that's 17 players that contributed for the Las Vegas Raiders last year that I don't think are going to make it this year. And I say that, and I wanted to do this show not as much of a brag, but as this team is moving in the right direction. And the more names that are featured in this video, personally, I think is a good thing. Reminder, y'all, 4 p.m. Eastern time, better pull up. We're going to be interviewing a Raiders player that was drafted this year, and we're going to be giving away a signed jersey. If you're not subscribed, you got no chance to win.